So when we started the design process on this bike, I wanted to stray away from the typical tube frame chassis. So what we did here is, instead of the normal tube frame chassis, we actually went with 1/4-inch plate. And I've actually seen this now a couple times from a couple different guys, and I hadn't seen anything that's actually been built in a custom form of this nature. So we wanted to kind of fuse the old and the new together, and when we did that, we did it in a couple different ways. And instead of just welding the plate together or coming up with any kind of gusseting the plates, we ended up using standoffs in between the plates themselves. And this is all 1/4-inch 304 stainless frame, okay? So all of this that you see here was designed on CAD software in-house, my buddy Kevin. And what we did is we actually mirrored a actual hardtail panhead frame that I had. So we mirrored that exact image because I wanted the short bobber kind of stance on this build, and we converted all that into a plate drawing. And we also wanted to hug the motor as tightly as possible. So this is a 48 panhead here, and if you look real close, the actual frame is literally molded around the engine. So when you pull this engine out of the frame, it almost looks like you took a picture of a panhead and it's in the frame itself. So it's actually the exact shape of the motor. So when you put the motor in, it slides right in, and it's the exact form of that piece. So, and we kind of carry that all the way back through the frame here. Instead of just welding the frame together as you would like a normal chassis, we ended up doing a bolt style. So this whole frame is bolted together from both sides because it's two pieces. It's actually three pieces. So the rear actually has a third member that bolts into the back of it, okay? And that acts as a, structural integrity, adds a lot of rigidity and everything in the back end here. So to do that, we kept everything at a 2-inch spacing. So we spaced everything with aluminum space standoffs, and it's all 3/8 16 hardware. And I know you think that sounds kind of crazy, or like, oh my god, that's a lot of hardware, but we were going for the industrialized look, right? I really like the real vintage look. I guess some people call it steampunk. I've heard a lot of people call this bike the erector set. I mean, if you ever remember when you were a kid, you had the metal erector sets. For me, my era, we had Connects, like that was our big thing. But it's kind of along those lines where you bolt it all together. And it added a lot of problems for us because when I was putting this whole frame together, it required a ton of work, because we actually had to go through and I had to machine a ton of these spacers to fit correctly, and it's got to be perfect on both sides because it obviously has to be uniform all the way back, and you want it to be strong and you want it to be straight, just like any normal motorcycle frame would be. So all these spacers in the back had to be custom machined down. I had to put them all in a lathe, turn them down, cut them, measure everything, because on the side gussets here, it was all kind of different lengths, so we had to cut those down. The hardware, I couldn't get the hardware in the right length, so I actually had to modify every little individual piece of hardware in the back. But it also added some cool stuff for us because it allowed me to tie things in and put some bracketry to the frame, whereas you normally would have to drill a hole or weld a tab somewhere on a normal tube chassis, or that kind of thing. So it was pretty cool. It worked out. After I put the whole frame together, I did it a few times actually, during mock-up phase and everything. For a final assembly phase, I tore it all down, and being stainless, you can polish it. I didn't want to send it out and get it plated or anything. I wanted to polish it, so I stripped it all down. I sanded it. It was like 9 different steps of sanding for each side, and then had to run it through a big hand polishing wheel, and I got it to a mirror buff finish. And I had to do both sides, and then you can still see a lot of the inside of the frame in certain areas of the bike. So I ended up having to side and polish that because I didn't want to mirror polish the inside as well. And with all the standoffs, there's hundreds of standoffs in this frame to make up for the spacing. Those are all hand satin buffed as well. I put them all on a wire wheel and buffed every single one of them after they were machined, after they were fit. Obviously everything's Loctited, And if you go through all the critical components like the rear blocks and everything where it bolts the frame together to the rear, and all my motor mounts, they're actual CNC machine blocks that bolted into the frame the same width spacing as the standoffs themselves. So my motor mounts, everything are bolted into the frame, but then I actually Loctited everything you see here. Has Loctite on it, and all the critical components are wire tied. So it's like an aviation lock wire, and we carried that all the way through the frame, obviously. And then, you know, we came into the back portion here, and what we did here is, again, I wanted to kind of blend old and new. So what's new, like what do you run for new brakes, that kind of thing? Brembos, right? Brembos is a very well known brand in our industry, and I have them on a few of my other bikes. I really like them. So I got these Brembo calipers, and Kevin got to work modeling up some stuff, and we actually integrated this Brembo caliper bracket and made it go into the back of the frame. So what it does is, when you have your wheel adjustment or your chain adjustment for your rear, your tension on your rear chain, it actually slides with it just like it would like a factory style bracket. But this allowed us to mount the dual Brembos. And I have two Brembos in the back here. I know some people are probably going, wow, it's a lot of brake for the back. You don't need that much brake. Well, the way I'm using this is different from a normal bike. The rear brake pedal, which you see right here, I made all this manual linkage right here. It comes back through here, and it goes to my rear master cylinder. And that rear master cylinder will power, one of these rear brake calipers. And what I did, I'm not running a front brake, and I still need a heel hold setup because I'm running a foot clutch, suicide clutch, some people call it. And I have no controls or anything on my bars to do that. So what I ended up doing was I ran an internal hand brake, and it comes down around the frame through our coil. Again, this is stuff from our company, Competition Distributing. And I actually repurposed a 1910 Harley-Davidson decompression valve lever, made the linkage, and it goes to the other rear cylinder, master cylinder here, which is mounted right next to this. It's in a mirror form, and that will power the other rear brake. And by rear brake, I mean technically front brake, because you can apply it with your hand through the internal grip like you would your throttle, just on the left side, and that will stop, and that will hold the bike on a hill for me, so I can take my left foot and put it on the ground. And everything else is pretty much just like a normal motorcycle. You got your regular 13-inch rear rotor here, and then I made these chain adjusters, axle adjusters that integrated into the frame, so it allows me to tension and adjust my chain tension, all that good stuff. So the whole entire frame of this bike was literally based, we had to kind of start from ground zero. We knew from day one we were going to put an inertia starter on the bike, so we had to design the entire frame around the inertia starter to get it to work correctly. So a lot of people are like, oh, how'd you get an inertia starter in there? Well, to be honest, the entire frame is designed around it. We started there, and then Kevin, we had a lot of different revisions. There was a lot of work, a lot of bouncing ideas off each other and that kind of thing, and we were finally able to end up with what you see here. And what allows us to run an inertia starter here in place of where your normal oil tank would be is the fact that when I built my tanks, when I made these, I made the tank to hold oil instead of fuel. So just like the old bikes, the old days, again, blending that old new thing together. One side is oil, one side is fuel. So this is my oil tank on this side, and I chose it on the right side because I wanted to keep all my lines clean, neat, and able to plumb into the motor, and that allowed me to open the space here for my inertia starter. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe, comment, join the email list. We're going to be sending out updates and that kind of thing, and let us know what you guys want to see. But we're going to be going through the bike, and we'll be breaking it down more as we go along.